The sound of laughter burst through the hallway like a crack of thunder. It wasn't the sweet, casual kind that made people feel warm and welcomed. No. This one was sharp, raw, and ugly, filled with ridicule. In the center of a spacious, glass-walled living room in Enugu, surrounded by sleek leather couches and designer whiskey bottles, Ifeanyi stood with a glass of cognac in one hand and a cruel smirk carved into his face. His friends, 5 men dressed in sharp blazers and fake humility, roared with laughter at something Ifeanyi had just said. Their eyes all turned toward the woman standing quietly by the door, Ada. She had entered holding a silver tray with suya and chin-chin, carefully arranged like she always did for her husband's business gatherings. But she froze the moment she heard the words. Every step she had taken with love and effort shattered beneath her as his voice echoed through the room again. I swear, sometimes I wonder if she's secretly eating for 10. Just look at her, walking like a pregnant elephant. In slow motion. Laughter erupted again. This time louder. One of the men even slapped his thigh. Another choked on his drink from laughing too hard. But Ada stood still, the tray trembling slightly in her hand. She tried to mask the hurt with a small smile, but her cheeks betrayed her, flushing with shame. No one defended her. Not even the one guest who had once called her sister. Ifeanyi looked at her with mockery, raising his glass like he'd just won a bet. My dear wife, he said, don't mind us. Just jokes. You know how men play. Her lips parted, but no words came. Not a single word. The pain didn't come from the insult alone, it came from who said it, and how easily he had thrown it into the air like it meant nothing. They had been married for 6 years. 6 hard years. Ada had stood by him through joblessness, family shame, and a stretch of 2 full years where she worked in a primary school just to keep food on their table. She never complained, even when his mother whispered that she wasn't fresh enough to carry grandchildren. Now, in the prime of his wealth, when he had finally built that tech logistics firm and started earning the kind of money he used to dream about, this was her reward. Public humiliation. Ada placed the tray gently on the coffee table, not making eye contact. Her hands shook as she wiped them on her wrapper and walked silently to the back room. One of the guests chuckled nervously. That was harsh, bro, Chuka murmured, trying to lighten the mood. I beg. She's too soft. Always looking like she's tired. No spark. I need a woman that matches my brand now, Ifeanyi replied, tossing back his drink. The others laughed again, but Chuka didn't. He glanced at the hallway Ada had just disappeared into, something tightening in his chest. In the bedroom, Ada leaned against the door, her hands covering her mouth to silence the sobs. Tears streamed freely, soaking into the scarf tied around her head. Her chest heaved silently as she slid to the floor. It wasn't just the words. It was the look on Ifeanyi's face, the pride in his mockery. As if everything she'd ever done counted for nothing now that she didn't fit the slim-bodied, social media influencer image he now craved. The most painful part. She saw this coming. For months, he had been distant. His compliments stopped. His touch turned mechanical. His words grew colder. Whenever she asked what was wrong, he told her not to be insecure. Now she knows. She wasn't the wife he wanted anymore. She was a shadow in his glowing success. An embarrassment to parade before his rich friends. But Ada wasn't made of ash. There was still a fire somewhere inside her, dim, but not dead. That night, while Ifeanyi snored loudly beside her, smelling of whiskey and arrogance, Ada sat quietly by the window. She stared into the moonlight, whispering the same prayer she had whispered during the dark days of their marriage. God, don't let my pain be wasted. The next morning, Ada acted like nothing had happened. She served breakfast as usual, toast, eggs, peppered goat meat, and even ironed Ifeanyi's favorite white kaftan. He barely muttered thanks. Not that she expected one. But beneath that calm face, Ada had made a decision. She started rising earlier. At 4 a.m., she would tiptoe into the guest room and begin to stretch and walk. 10 minutes at first. Then 20. Then she started jogging. She cut down on the leftover snacks. Stopped eating late at night. No fanfare. No drama. She began researching online about plant-based nutrition, not to lose weight for Ifani, but to find herself again. She started volunteering at the local women's center twice a week, mentoring young girls on confidence and healing. There, she found not just friends, but sisters. Women who reminded her of the strength she had buried beneath years of being quiet. At first, Ifani didn't notice the changes. Then one day, he came home early from a board meeting and saw her leading a community fitness class in the compound next door. Her laughter filled the air. She was in leggings and a fitted t-shirt. Her arms no longer shook. Her belly was tighter. Her face glowed with sweat and joy. He blinked, confused. "Ada," he muttered from behind the gate. She turned briefly, smiled, and returned to the women. He stood there for minutes. Watching. Suddenly unsure of himself. Weeks passed, and Ada's glow only grew. She began receiving invitations to speak at women's events. One of her videos on self-love went viral on TikTok. Soon, she was being called Coach Ada. Ifani, meanwhile, began to unravel. His company was under investigation for fraudulent invoicing. His best friend turned competitor had poached two of his biggest clients. And at home, his once meek wife now spoke with clarity, grace, and a fire he hadn't seen in years. But the real slap came on the day of his company's rebranding gala. Dressed in his best Agbada, Ifani waited near the entrance, scanning the crowd for Ada. She was supposed to arrive in a gown he had paid for, a chance to show off his revamped wife. The cameras were ready. But when she entered, she wasn't wearing the gown. She wore something else. A wine-colored dress, custom-made by a local designer. It hugged her new curves, but with elegance. She walked in alone. Confident. Not looking for approval, just existing like she belonged. And the cameras? They followed her. Everyone wanted to know who she was. One blogger even whispered, "Who's that woman? She walks like a queen." And Ifani? He smiled stiffly. But inside, he was sinking. Because he knew, he didn't build this version of Ada. He broke her. And somehow, she rebuilt herself without him. That night, after everyone had left, he sat on the edge of their bed. "You looked amazing," he muttered. Ada, now removing her earrings, glanced at him. "Thank you. You've changed a lot. It's like, you're glowing." She paused. "Maybe I stopped trying to please people who didn't see my worth." The words hung in the air like thunderclouds. He looked away. "I've been thinking," he said after a moment. "Maybe we should take a trip. Reconnect." Ada turned to face him, her tone still calm. "You mean, now that I fit into your idea of worthy?" "No. That's not what I meant, Ada, I just..." She stood. "You called me a fat elephant in front of your friends, Ifani. You laughed as if I was just a bad joke. But let me tell you what's funny, karma didn't even wait. It came the moment I stopped begging for your respect." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, Ifani didn't have a comeback. No smirk. No joke. Just silence. And for the first time, Ada didn't cry. She walked out of the room, her head high, heart steady, and spine stronger than steel. He sat there, staring at the empty doorway, feeling the emptiness creep in. What if she was truly gone this time? What if the woman he had once mocked was now the one person whose absence would break him? Ifani woke up the next morning to an unusually quiet house. No aroma of fried plantain. No humming from the kitchen. No sound of Ada arranging cushions or gently sweeping the floor like she always did. The silence was loud. So loud it echoed through the marble tiles and stainless steel appliances like something had left, and taken the soul of the home with it. He reached over to the other side of the bed. Empty. Still warm, but empty. He rubbed his hand over his face, then pulled on a shirt and walked to the living room. That's when he saw the note. Written in Ada's clean handwriting, it sat neatly on the coffee table beside a folded wrapper. Gone to my first speaking engagement in Abuja. Be back in 3 days. Take care of yourself. Ada. Ifani's eyebrows twitched. Speaking engagement. He hadn't realized she was traveling. She hadn't even asked for permission, or informed him. That fact settled into his chest like a heavy stone. She used to tell him everything. She used to wait for his nod before stepping outside the front door. And now? She was out of town, giving speeches and leaving him behind with a 5-line note. He read it again. Then crumpled it in frustration. In Abuja, Ada stood on a brightly lit stage, facing a crowd of over 100 women seated in white plastic chairs. Many wore headscarves. Others had babies on their laps. But all of them stared at her with wide, curious eyes. She took a breath. Held it. Then let it out slowly before speaking. There was a time I believed I had to shrink myself to be loved, she began. That I had to be smaller. Softer. Quieter. To be a good wife, I had to accept disrespect in silence. I thought it made me strong. But I was wrong. The room held its breath. Real strength isn't silence. It's rising from the ashes of insult and saying, I deserve more. A woman in the third row burst into tears. Another clapped. And before long, the whole hall stood up in a slow, powerful ovation. Ada didn't cry. She simply smiled. Not a proud smile. A peaceful one. She had walked through fire, and came out refined. Back in Enugu, Ifani tried to distract himself. He went to the club with his friends. They drank. Talked about politics. Played poker. But something kept eating at him. When one of his friends mentioned Ada's name, calling her the woman with the viral women's video, Ifani felt his stomach turn. Even his friends now saw her as something more. He returned home that night, expecting her to call. But there was nothing. No text. No missed call. Only her face on Instagram, standing beside a female senator, laughing like a woman who knew her place in the world. That night, he tossed and turned. And when sleep came, it brought a nightmare. In it, Ada was walking away from him. He called out, but she didn't hear. He chased her, but the faster he ran, the further she moved away. Until she vanished into a spotlight, and he stood alone in the dark. He woke up sweating. When Ada returned from Abuja, she didn't walk in with apology or excitement. She moved through the house with quiet assurance. How was your trip? Ifani asked as she unpacked her bag. Good, she replied, folding her clothes. You didn't even. I mean, no update. You just left. She paused. I left you a note. He exhaled. Ada, come on. I feel like we're drifting apart. Ada looked at him now, really looked. We've been drifting for years, Ifani. You just noticed because now I'm not drowning quietly anymore. That hit like a slap. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his palms together. Do you still love me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ada's eyes softened for a second. Then hardened again. I loved you enough to stay when you had nothing. I carried your shame. I endured your insults. I prayed for you when you gave up on yourself. But love without respect is slow death, Ifani. And I don't want to die anymore. She turned away. And for the first time in their marriage, Ifani felt powerless. A week later, things got worse. The EFCC came knocking. Apparently, there was a financial discrepancy in one of Ifani's international transactions. A whistleblower had leaked documents. He wasn't arrested, but his accounts were frozen pending investigation. His so-called friend stopped picking his calls. His mother, who once praised him endlessly, now whispered that maybe Ada was the curse in his life. But Ada? She didn't gloat. She didn't shout, "I told you so." Instead, she kept to herself. Cooked enough food to last 3 days. Cleaned out her old sewing machine and started taking custom orders from women in her fitness group. When Ifani asked for help with groceries one morning, she gave him a list of local food banks. "You used to mock women who did community work. Maybe it's time to visit them," she said calmly. By the 3rd month of his financial freeze, Ifani was desperate. He tried reaching out to a senator he once hosted at a retreat. The man responded with a short text. "Your wife is more useful to us now than you. Maybe learn from her." That night, Ifani stood in the kitchen, watching Ada package a customer's geli into a brown paper bag. "I want us to start over," he said. Ada looked up, silent. "I want to fix things. I'm ready to go for counseling. To listen. To respect you." Ada placed the geli on the counter. "I'm not angry anymore, Ifani. But I've outgrown the version of me that needed your approval to feel whole." His hands shook. He reached out, but she stepped back. "I loved you deeply," she added. "But you killed something in me that day. When you stood there, calling me a fat elephant and laughing like I was nothing, something broke." Ifani's eyes welled up. "I was stupid. I thought it was just a joke." "Jokes don't leave scars," Ada whispered. "That moment, it built the woman I am now. So maybe I should thank you." She walked past him, heading outside to deliver her package. He stood there, breathing heavily. Alone. Karma had come. Not with fire and fury, but with silence and absence. Ada hadn't left him physically. But he had already lost her. For weeks, Ifani walked around his house like a stranger. He was no longer the king of his castle, just a ghost in a mansion full of echoes. The silence between him and Ada became a wall too thick to climb, and too cold to melt. She still lived there, still cooked her own meals, still greeted him politely. But her heart had moved on. It showed in everything. She no longer waited at the door when he left for meetings. She no longer asked how his day went. And when he returned home at night, the light in her eyes wasn't just dim, it was gone. One Sunday morning, Ifani walked into the sitting room to find Ada being interviewed on television. Not just local news, African Women Today, one of the biggest empowerment programs in the region. She wore a soft peach dress, hair wrapped in a simple geli. Her voice was calm but powerful. "I was married to a man who made me feel invisible," she said. "I stayed because I thought that was strength. But true strength is walking away from anything that breaks your spirit." The host leaned in. "And what made you finally rise?" Ada smiled gently. "He mocked me in front of others. That was the moment I realized, I was the only one still fighting for my dignity. If anyone had walked into that room, they would have heard glass shattering." Ifani had thrown his whiskey tumbler against the wall. Not because she lied, she hadn't. But because the whole world now knew what he did. And no matter how much money he made, or power he gained, he would always be the man who humiliated his wife and lost her to her glow-up. Later that day, Ada returned from church. Ifani was waiting in the living room. He looked tired. The beard he once trimmed so carefully was patchy now. His usual designer clothes were replaced with simple chinos and a polo shirt. His eyes, however, were still sharp, watching her closely. "So this is it?" he asked quietly. You're turning me into a villain on TV now. Ada set her purse down. I didn't mention your name. You didn't need to. Everyone knows we're married. Ada folded her arms. You're worried about your image. But were you worried about mine when you made that joke? When you let your friends laugh at me like I was nothing? I was wrong, Ada. I admit it. But haven't I suffered enough? Ada blinked slowly, then walked up to him. You think this is punishment? No, Ifani. This is freedom. You just don't recognize it. She turned to leave. He called after her. Are you seeing someone else? That stopped her. She looked over her shoulder. Why? So you can start valuing me only when another man does. His mouth opened. Then closed. She didn't wait for another word. She walked into her room and shut the door softly. The rumors began 2 weeks later. Whispers in the compound. Talks at the gym. Even snippets on social media. Ada was being seen with Obinna Okoye, a widowed philanthropist known for funding girls' education in rural communities. Handsome, articulate, and recently voted Community Hero of the Year. They were spotted together at a charity ball. Then at a book launch. And once, leaving a dinner event in Abuja. Ifani pretended he didn't care. But inside, it burned. One night, he waited until Ada came home. She walked in, glowing in a navy blue gown, her heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. You're dating Obinna now? He asked, standing by the doorway. She didn't flinch. What I do with my time is none of your business. You're still married to me. She turned fully now. In name only. And soon, not even that. You're filing for divorce. Ada didn't say a word. She simply walked past him, and dropped a manila envelope on the table. Inside, legal separation papers. Ifani's heart dropped to his stomach. He stood still for a long time, staring at the envelope as if it might vanish if he blinked. The next day, he showed up at his mother's house, looking completely undone. His mother, Mama Eunice, gasped when she saw him. Ifani. What happened to you? You look like you've been fighting demons. He sat down quietly, holding his head in his hands. Mama. Ada is leaving me. She sat down too, frowning. Good. Maybe now you'll understand what you've done. He looked up, startled. You supported her. I warned you, she said. Ada was a gift. A woman who prayed for you, cooked for you, stayed when your own brothers mocked you. And how did you repay her? You turned her into a joke. A fat elephant, you called her. His eyes watered. I thought I was being funny. You were being cruel. Mama Eunice shouted. And now you want sympathy? No, my son. You need grace, not pity. But you threw that away. He buried his face in his palms. Meanwhile, Ada continued to rise. She launched a local nonprofit for women battling low self-esteem. Her fitness videos hit 1 million views. She was invited to speak at a United Nations panel on African women in leadership. Obinna remained a quiet supporter, never pushing, never rushing. Just present. He respected her space, but it was clear he admired her deeply. And the world saw it. Ifani saw it too. One night, while scrolling Instagram, he saw a photo of them, Obinna and Ada, standing beside a group of orphan girls they had just sponsored into secondary school. The caption read, "Healing isn't about revenge, it's about rediscovering your worth. Thank you, at Ada_the_woman, for reminding us all." Ifani dropped his phone. Tears rolled down his cheeks before he could stop them. Not because she was smiling with someone else. But because it had taken him too long to realize. He was never her reward. She had always been his. It was raining hard the day Ifani stood at the back of the conference hall. He hadn't been invited. He came alone. Sat at the last row in a plain black shirt, hood over his head. He didn't want to be seen. He just wanted to see her. Ada. She stood on stage, commanding a crowd of over 2,000 women. Her voice was steady. Her presence, magnetic. Cameras flashed. Banners fluttered overhead, the new woman, rising from ashes to authority. "We are taught to be quiet," she said. "To endure disrespect, to believe love means pain. But today, I want to remind every woman here, your voice is powerful. Your presence is valid. And your dignity is not a negotiation." The audience erupted in applause. Some wiped tears. Others shouted her name. Ada. 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 Ifani felt a lump swell in his throat. He looked around. No one noticed him. And for the first time, he understood, he was no longer part of her world. Later that evening, while Ada took photos with fans and dignitaries, Ifani stood outside in the rain, waiting beside her car. She didn't see him until she walked out of the venue with her assistant. Their eyes met. She stopped. So did the rain, almost like the skies were giving them space to speak. "What are you doing here?" she asked calmly, handing her handbag to the assistant. I wanted to see you speak," he said, voice low. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she looked at him. Really looked. And what she saw wasn't the man she married. It wasn't the arrogant, sharp-tongued Ifani who had once laughed at her weight. It was a man lost in his own mistakes. "You were incredible in there," he continued. "Powerful. Inspiring. Thank you." "Ada, please," he said, taking a slow step forward. "I came to apologize. Not because of what the world now sees. But because I finally see it too." She tilted her head, arms folded. "See what? That I broke something precious. And I don't deserve to fix it. But I need you to know, I'm sorry. Deeply. I hurt you. I humiliated you. And I'll carry that shame forever." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You know what hurts more than the insult, Ifani?" she asked quietly. He looked up, eyes red. "What?" "That I stayed after it. That I still cooked your meals, still prayed for you, still wore a smile around your friends. I swallowed my pain to protect your image." "I know," he whispered. "But I'm not doing that anymore." He nodded. "I understand." A long silence stretched between them. "I don't hate you, Ifani," she said finally. "I've forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It means release." She turned to her assistant. "Let's go." They walked past him, stepped into the car, and drove away. And just like that, she was gone. Again. Weeks passed. Ifani received his legal notice in the mail. The divorce had been finalized. It was surreal. He held the document in his hands and stared at her signature. Her name looked the same. But everything else had changed. She no longer belonged to him, not legally, not emotionally, not spiritually. He tried to move on. He even dated a young, flashy influencer once, just to feel wanted. But every laugh felt fake. Every conversation is empty. No one asked about his goals. No one prayed for him before a business pitch. No one packed his lunch and added a note that said, "You're more than your success." No one was Ada. Meanwhile, Ada flourished. Her foundation had now reached 6 states, training over 12,000 women in confidence building, business skills, and healing from domestic emotional trauma. Her name was on magazine covers. She was named among the top 10 most influential women in West Africa. Obinna remained in her life, not as a rescuer, but as a friend who saw her light even when she didn't. One afternoon, as they sat beneath the mango trees at a rural training center, Obinna handed her a small box. She blinked. "What's this?" "Nothing dramatic," he said with a smile. "It's not a proposal. It's a reminder." Inside the box, a gold bracelet engraved with the words, "You were always enough." Her eyes filled. But she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." One Saturday, Ada received a call from Mama Eunice. The voice on the other end was shaky. "Ada, please. Can you come? Ifani is not well. Emotionally. He's sinking." Ada stood by her window, the sun warm on her face. Her hands clenched the phone. "Mama, I've done my forgiving. But I can't be the one to save him." "I'm not asking you to save him," Mama Eunice replied gently. "But sometimes seeing someone rise can give others hope. Even those who fell." Ada was silent. Then softly said, "I'll pray for him." That night, as Ifani sat alone in his dimly lit living room, phone in hand, scrolling through old photos of them smiling in the early years, he paused at one in particular. Ada, in a yellow dress. Barefaced. Hair wrapped in a scarf. Laughing so hard her eyes squinted. He stared at the photo for minutes. Then whispered, "You were never the elephant, Ada. I was. You were the lion I was too weak to walk beside." That line left Ifani trembling in the silence of his apartment. The same living room that once echoed with his booming laughter now felt like a tomb. Cold. Still. Heavy with regret. He had sold their story for the price of a joke. And now, the whole world was watching Ada soar, while he was learning, slowly, painfully, how to sit in the ashes he'd created. Weeks passed. And then came the invitation he never expected. A cream-colored envelope, dropped at his doorstep. No glitter. No flourish. Just a card embossed with bold gold lettering. The Ada Foundation, 5th Anniversary Celebration. International Civic Center, Abuja. Theme, When She Rises. He turned the card over. There was no note, no signature. Just a single line typed at the bottom. "This is not a reconciliation. It's a moment." He read it 3 times. Then, without knowing why, he booked a flight. The hall was breathtaking. Rich gold fabric draped across the ceiling. Tables set with white roses and bronze candle holders. Rows of women in vibrant ankara and chiffon gowns, their laughter humming with power and promise. Ifani sat at the very back. Alone. No camera on him. No name tag. No smile. The event began with stories, testimonies of women Ada had mentored, survivors of domestic ridicule, young girls who now ran businesses, mothers who no longer begged for dignity. Then the spotlight dimmed. And her name was called. Please rise for the woman whose journey redefined resilience. The founder and director of the Ada Foundation. Ada Ease. The entire hall stood. Thunderous applause rose like a wave. And there she was, emerging from behind the curtain, regal in a flowing white gown, shoulders tall, eyes forward, steps deliberate. Ifani's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just how stunning she looked. It was the stillness in her. The command in her silence. The fullness of someone who had found herself beyond the ruins. She walked past powerful women, past community leaders, past cameras, and stood at the podium, unshaken. When I started this foundation, Ada began, her voice warm but steady, I didn't do it because I had all the answers. I did it because I had one question, how did I forget who I was? The crowd listened like the wind had paused. I forgot because I let someone shrink me with words that sounded like jokes but cut like knives. I forgot because I spent years performing worthiness in a house where love was only given to silence. Murmurs of agreement rippled across the room. But the truth is, I had to forget myself to meet the woman I was born to be. Applause again. Louder this time. To the women in this room, I say this: your body is not a punchline. Your silence is not obedience. And your tears are not weakness. They are seeds. And when they grow, the world will clap in your name. They were clapping already. After the ceremony, Ada moved through the crowd with elegance and ease. She hugged young girls. She posed with donors. She shook hands with government officials. Then she turned a corner and stopped. There he was. Ifani. Standing by the wall. Not dressed to impress. No camera. No entourage. Just him. For a second, they stared. The past between them a silent ocean. You came, she said quietly. I had to, he replied. She tilted her head slightly. Why? To see the woman you've become. And to accept the man I'll never be again. Ada nodded slowly. You didn't have to come to accept that. I know, he said. But I needed to feel it, while standing in the back of your victory. She looked at him, eyes soft but unreadable. You hurt me. I know. You didn't just insult me in front of your friends. You insulted everything I gave, my loyalty, my body, my patience. I know, he repeated, voice cracking. And I've spent every day since learning how to live without your grace. Ada looked down, then back up. I've forgiven you, Ifani. But I didn't do it for you. I wouldn't deserve it if you did. Silence. And then she stepped closer, eyes shining, not with tears, but with truth. I loved you once, she said. But now, I love me more. He smiled through the pain. I'm glad. She held his gaze a moment longer, then turned to leave. But before she did, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small card. There's a young boys mentorship program launching next month. You once said you didn't have a role model growing up. Maybe now, you can be one. He took the card, stunned. She walked away. Not just from him. From everything he once represented. And he let her go. Because for the first time in his life, Ifani understood. Ada never needed him to rise. He needed her to remember who he could have been. 1 year later. A group of boys sat in plastic chairs under a mango tree, notebooks on their laps. At the front stood a man in a simple shirt, speaking with passion. Respect isn't earned through power, he said. It's earned through kindness. And if you want to be loved, you have to learn how to love in a language that doesn't hurt. His name tag read. Mentor, Ifani Ease. And across town, Ada stood at a panel in New York, representing Africa at a global women's summit. She didn't mention him. She didn't need to. The world knew who broke her. But now, the world knows her not for the pain she endured, but for the woman she chose to become after.